You've got your stories to tell. I've got my stories to tell. So today, welcome to Story Time. Story Time is a little bit like a slightly public confession. I feel like sometimes that I share these stories as evidence of my imperfection. And in doing so, not only do I hope to shed light on the beauty that comes from our imperfection, the opportunity for compassion for ourselves and for others, and truly that courage that we can practice by doing hard things. But most importantly, the validation, the encouragement to do those hard things and to reveal our secrets, it comes in the way of the connection. So I hope that with a heart of compassion, you can meet me here for story time to share the stories of our own imperfection in the hopes of carving out new, calm, abiding space that is both loving and challenging, encouraging to be our best selves and holding us accountable for when perhaps we fall short of what is within our capacity. So today's story is really kind of a reflection on my pet peeves, the things that just piss me off, that push me to the edge, and often are the biggest challenges to my practice of yoga living, of compassionate living. And I know that those pet peeves are not the real reason for my frustration, particularly when it explodes into non-yogic behavior, right? If I respond aggressively or actively, I know that it's usually kind of the last straw or a culmination of things when I've neglected perhaps my self-care. But it's interesting to me that in our modern culture, we use this term pet peeves almost as an endearing term, right? In the sense that it's my pet peeve. It's like my pet cat, my pet dog. It's, yeah, sometimes demands more of me than I really want to give, but I love it. I nurture it. I want it in my life. And that's not really what we're talking about. When we talk about a pet peeve, it's usually the things that kind of piss us off, the things that we don't want to have to deal with. And yet, do we not learn a lot from having to navigate the care of our pets, the care of our children, the care of those who need us? And is that maybe not why the pet peeves are really that gentle baby step into practicing the core of our values? So less of a specific story and more of a journey with me for a moment as I've reflected on some of the things that piss me off, and see if we can't find the values that are at the heart of that and why it is that it sometimes aggravates me, builds this heat that erupts in a strong voice or an aggressive behavior of action, or sometimes the other end of a withdrawal and say, fuck it all, I'm done, I quit. So here are the 4 top pet peeves that came to mind as I was brainstorming for today. And the first of which I got an opportunity to practice today. The first of which is when I sit down on the toilet and I go to grab the toilet paper and it's empty. Now, my husband is particularly good at leaving a new roll next to the toilet when there's a few sheets left, but not enough to get a full wipe. So I am quite blessed with having his kindness. But today I finished the roll, and truth be told, there was enough to finish the job. But I took that next step because it's important to me to not be the one that's stranded finding that empty toilet paper roll when I'm on the potty. So I did the extra effort to get an extra roll and not just put it next to the toilet, which is acceptable, but not the full expression of what I think is a love in action, a doing more than maybe I need in the moment. Because what I've learned is 9 times out of 10, I'm the one who gets screwed because I'm the one that comes back in the bathroom when there's no toilet paper because I failed to replace it. but sometimes it's others. So I went ahead and out of not just selfish desire to have the toilet paper there when I need it next, but also I live with 4 other people. Someone else might be using that toilet between now and then. So I went ahead and put it on the roll. Now, a second sub pet peeve is I really have a personal opinion on which way the toilet paper should roll off the roller. So that's another reason why I put it on the roll so that it's the way I like it. Right? So notice that, and where it is that perhaps I start to feel offended or out of sorts when it's not the way I want it. So something to know about me. Second pet peeve is when the conditions are kind of layered here, but when the dishwasher has been emptied and is ready to receive dirty dishes, I get annoyed at the laziness, that's where my head goes, of people leaving their dishes, their dirty dishes on the side of the sink or in the sink and not actually making that extra effort of putting them in the dishwasher. And I honestly don't even mind if they're in the sink when the dishwasher is still clean. Partly that's because Peter has owned that job as one of his acts of service for our family, and he does a really good job, and he's rather particular about how it's done. He doesn't like how I do it. So if the dishes are clean in the dishwasher, then I don't have as much of a visceral response of why didn't they follow through. But when the dishes have been emptied and it's ready to receive, why not make that extra effort? Not unlike the toilet paper onto the roll. The third one is when drivers out in the world creep over the stop line, particularly at a red light, when they're trying to get a jump on getting through the intersection or wherever they're going. For whatever reason, it just really tweaks my sense of justice, my sense of rightness, my sense of follow the rules, perhaps. But the value is about being fair, non-stealing from someone else's safety, non-stealing from the intention that we all have to stop behind the line. So whether it's creeping forward while the light is still red or rolling through the intersection, it triggers something in me about the selfishness that I perceive the other is using to justify their decisions. And this brings me probably to one of my biggest pet peeves, and it really does build, I think, incrementally in terms of the severity of how I receive these harms to myself. And that is when people don't follow through on a commitment that they've made, especially when the commitment is made as one, maybe an opportunity of service for them, a chance for them to do something or to contribute in a way that would be positive. And they've also have an opportunity to shift that responsibility or say no or delay that responsibility. So in essence, what it is that this theft of opportunity, this theft of time of saying you'll do something and not following through to do it makes me feel like the task wasn't valued, my time or my expectation wasn't valued. In other words, there's a selfishness that I perceive. Now, I don't know that that's what's happening on the other end. I reframe this often as the other's perhaps inattentiveness. They don't have the capacity to pay attention to this because there's other things that are demanding their energy, their resources, their attention. And that works for a little while. For the most part, that works. But when I feel like I've been taken advantage of, that starts to drain very rapidly, right? That error, that room for compassion dwindles quickly, especially when I've made an effort to allow or to give an out to someone. So I guess in sharing these pet peeves, they really all correlate around this idea, this upbringing message of don't be selfish. Don't take advantage. Don't expect to have everything your way. And yet the irony is when I don't get my way is when I'm feeling violated, when I'm feeling perhaps even offended, because it rubs at the core of this sense of ahimsa. What does ahimsa, the practice of compassion, the practice of loving kindness look like? It means thinking of others for me. And when we fail to think of others, there's some grace that can be given, especially if we know that there is extenuating circumstances. And so I don't always know the extenuating circumstances that may make someone more or less available to pay attention to the outer world. And yet, what we do over time, what we do habitually, becomes less attentive to our awareness. In other words, if we make it a habit of not showing up, of not following through, of not making that extra effort, then we lose the capacity to do it even when we have the abundance of energy and attention and focus. So in other words, ahimsa, this practice of compassion, rooted or built into the truthfulness, it's the truthfulness that I want to make sure that I don't assume, you know what they say about assuming, right? I don't want to assume the circumstances of the person who has harmed me. And yet, I also don't want to enable and contribute to further harm, whether it's intentional or unintentional. Harm is still potential, right? Rolling, creeping through an intersection still runs a risk of initiating an accident. And it may not be them that's in the accident, it may be the wake that is left behind them. And to me, that's even more important to avoid, to not cause harm to others. To me, in my practice of ahimsa, is more important than to not practice harming myself. Now, I'm not saying that that's necessarily good or bad. I think that's why my practice here at Life's Work Yoga is so rooted in intentional self-care. Because I know that when I do my self-care, when I'm doing what I know helps to nourish my spirit, I get regular massages, I get regular wellness care, I take care of the cleanliness of my home so that I can enjoy it when I'm resting and relaxing. When I do those things of eating well and sleeping well and having friend time and all of the self-care components, playing and finding ways of service, I'm better able to accommodate those offenses in the moment. When my self-care suffers, so too does my ability to refrain from love and tolerate what is perceived as an infraction or a selfishness from others. And whether it's the compassion that I start with my self-care so that I can extend it to others, or gently holding truth, the satya of what is right in the world, what is honest and true, or even to the point where we get to the third yama of non-stealing. When we enable someone to do things that are harmful to themselves or to others, when we create the environment that doesn't hold them accountable and responsible, we steal from them the opportunity to learn and to grow. And likewise, we steal from ourselves the opportunity to find ease and peace, to trust one another. So yes, embrace your pet peeves, not necessarily as ways to justify and to validate your rightness in the world, but as a safe entry point into the deeper understanding of what matters most. And here's the nugget here. Here's where the challenge of diving deeper, one step at a time, really becomes the work of yoga. And that is recognizing what I value and how tightly I might be holding on to that. In threat, absolutely, we hold on to our values to give us a clearer, calm, abiding space, a sense of I'm in this. But when we're not threatened, when we're not in trauma, when we're not suffering, that's where we hold gently even our values so that others can coexist with their values, because they don't have to be a suffering source. unless we interpret it as a suffering source. So I want to wrap up story time and sharing one nuance that came as a part of this journaling and this reflection for today. And that is that when I frame these pet peeves as this toilet paper and the dishes and the drivers and even the follow through, the nugget here that is the real edge of my own transparency is that these are pet peeves to me because I do them. And when others don't, it pisses me off. If I can do them, why can't you? But not dissimilar to these pet peeves is the practice of giving my full attention to someone. Now, I advocate for giving the full attention all the time, right? It's one of my primary principles is that to give attention is the greatest gift we have to give. But when I'm reading a book or when I'm doing some work and someone asks for my attention, truth is I sometimes fake it. I'm not proud of that, but I pretend that I could do two things at once. And I really miss most of what's being shared. Now, fortunately, Peter and I, my partner and I, have a loving, teasing accountability here. We do it to each other. And so when we need full attention, as opposed to just a sharing to share or a connecting, we will ask for that. And then also call each other out. I'm like, you're not really listening, kind of testing the ground. And so this one's not so much a pet peeve, perhaps because I feel my own inadequacy, in which case there's easier access to compassion. Whereas in the ones that I have mastered, I'm quick to judge. But it's important for me to recognize that they are not dissimilar. They are all about choosing wisely what we pay attention to and how we invest our energy, not just in this moment, but ultimately this moment is meant to prepare us for what's next. That's the lesson of karma. So if I forget to put toilet paper on the roll, chances are 90% of the time it's me who suffers. If I don't pay attention to this story that's being shared with me, not only am I missing on that opportunity to hear the story, and more importantly, invest in the one I'm speaking with by listening, giving them my greatest gift. I too will probably have to experience something similar because I'm creating that as my karmic message. What I do will come back to me tenfold, says the Bible, right? In other words, be careful what seeds you sow and what seeds perhaps you get too aggressively to judge, because they may just be things that you have already practiced and the others have not yet done so. They've done other things. And that for me is how I remind myself of compassion, that my skills are different than your skills because my challenges have been different than your challenges. And what I've practiced has been reflective of what my life has asked of me and allowed for me to endure. What's your story on pet peeves? I'd love to know truly, so that I'm not alone in this idea of, yeah, I still have some rough edges. I still have some imperfections, even though I am deeply committed to this transparent alignment, this yoga living that I teach. It is a practice, and it's all yoga. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being a part of this journey of yoga living and being part of my circle for that mirroring alignment that we're in this together. And it's okay to be imperfect as long as we're practicing the showing up and the clearer seeing that comes with yoga. Be well. Take care of you and take care of yours. Those around you who you know and those around you do not yet know. May you breathe deeply and move freely, labor lovingly, and live vibrantly. Namaste. Any surprises or epiphanies or resonance?
Resonance, for sure. A comment, I think, which you kind of touched on this as well with your occasionally not following through with something that you also have a pet peeve for. It's hard for me to remember, like, this may not be the way this person always acts in this scenario. They might
Yes.
just not be aware in this moment, but
Yes.
usually they don't do the stop sign. I don't know. But in this moment, I'm seeing them do the wrong thing, and I'm like, fucking wrong.
Yeah, yeah. And to me, that's evidence of how easy it is to go to the all or nothing mentality, right? I see it once, it must happen all the time. And yet, I don't want anyone to assume that about me. I fucked up once and now you think I'm a fuck up? No, I messed up. I made a mistake. This is why the redoing and the undoing is such a critical part of the action step of transparent alignment, is recognizing when we do screw up. How do we make amends? How do we overcome that so that we can at least diminish the risk of it happening again?
And it's always nice to remind myself that you're human too.
Is that what you got out of today's story time? I'm human?
Oh yeah.
Perfect. Check that off my list. Yeah. Yeah. And honestly, I can say that has been an ongoing allowing in itself. I can honestly remember wanting to overcome humanity. And I think that's one of the reasons why I like the interpretation of meditation and yoga, not as a shedding our humanity, but an embracing of our humanity. One, because I can't figure out how to live without my humanity, at least not at this rendition of my understanding of the world and myself. But more importantly, because sometimes my humanity is the source of beauty and love and affirmation, and exactly the gateway into that bliss is by way of the sensations of the body. And I don't want to lose that. I don't want to deny that. And so if I want to have those highs of strong sensations, then I got to be willing to endure the hards, the lows, the yucks that are just the other side of that spectrum.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good day. I'll see you later.